Today is a day of transition for the North Country's congressional district. Well, most of the North Country. You all in the Watertown area have Claudia Tenney representing you, and that won't change. Elise Stefanik, in all likelihood, will ascend to the United Nations ambassadorship, and a scramble to replace her will ensue. With parts of the Capital Region and the Mohawk Valley also folded into the 21st Congressional District, how will this representation change for the North Country? That's today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Morja Wealth Management, serving the North Country for 3 generations. MorjaWM.com. Securities offered through Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. Hightower is an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Tuesday, January 21st. First up, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee earlier today. At her confirmation hearing to become the next U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Stefanik highlighted President Donald Trump's America First agenda.
When discussing this nomination with President Trump, the president shared with me that he sees great promise in the United Nations if it focuses on its founding mission of international peace and security.
Stefanik praised some of the UN's efforts, like the World Food Program, and was critical of others, such as the UN's Palestinian Relief Agency. Members of that agency were found to have been involved in the October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. Stefanik said she would assess every UN agency that the U.S. helps fund if the Senate confirms her nomination. County party chairs in New York's 21st Congressional District have been working behind the scenes to pick a candidate who will run in a special election to replace Elise Stefanik. No, there's no primary, which is not so little d Democratic, but that's how it is. One big question in this upcoming special election is this. As the district has grown south, will the two candidates even have strong North Country roots? Kara Chapman explored that issue and has our story.
Bill Owens first arrived in Plattsburgh when he was stationed at the former Air Force Base there in the late 70s. 30 years later, he won a special election to replace Republican Congressman John McHugh, himself a Jefferson County native. Owens says what was then New York's 23rd Congressional District was very much a North Country district.
I think that's the way it was looked at by the people who lived here and looked at politically.
He says that's because its population centers were places like Plattsburgh and Watertown. Since he left office, the district's boundaries have shifted farther and farther south, out of the North Country, due to redistricting.
Saratoga, the Fulton County area, the Glens Falls area, when you aggregate those populations, they tend to overwhelm the Plattsburghs, the Watertowns.
Watertown and most of Jefferson County have actually been carved out of the district. NY21 now stretches all the way down to the southern tip of Schoharie County, south of the New York State Thruway. Plattsburgh's status as one of the biggest municipalities in the district has been dwarfed by Rome and Oneida County. So now that a good chunk of the population is concentrated in the Mohawk Valley and Capital District, will the North Country play second fiddle? Some of the people who want to run in the special election have roots in the region, but others don't.
I'm Paula Collins.
Hi, I'm Anthony Constantino.
My name is Blake Gendabine.
Hi, I'm Dan Steck.
People like State Senator Dan Steck of Queensbury and St. Lawrence County farmer Blake Gendabine have spent almost their entire lives in the North Country. They're being weighed against people from outside the region, like Rensselaer County Executive Steve McLaughlin, Schoharie Assemblyman Chris Tague, and cannabis tax attorney Paula Collins. The county party chairs who will choose the special election candidates say their ties to and knowledge of the region matter. Mike Zagrabelny chairs the St. Lawrence County Democratic Committee. He says the North Country is huge and has diverse needs ranging from poverty and healthcare to agriculture and the environment.
So I think a candidate needs to be able to mesh all those differing views and really have a deep understanding of it.
Don Kuhn is the longtime chair of the Jefferson County Republican Committee. He says the fear for rural areas, like his, is that they'll be forgotten in the candidate selection process. But he says his fellow chairs are keeping the North Country in mind.
They're very cognizant of the needs of the North Country and the need to have someone in there that pays attention to the North Country.
Someone, Kuhn says, like Elise Stefanik. He says she's become an effective voice for the North Country and a tough player in Washington. That's even without the same historical ties to the region as her predecessors.
Stefanik herself wasn't really from the district.
That's David Fontana. He's a Plattsburgh native and a professor at George Washington University Law School who studies the North Country's politics.
When she first ran in 2014, although she presented herself as being a local, there was plenty of discussion about how she was actually from just south of the district.
Over the last decade, Stefanik's become a popular congresswoman, seen by many as an effective representative. She's well known for being attentive to constituent services and, according to her website, has returned more than $830 million to the district. She's also been really successful at the ballot box, beating her opponents by double-digit margins in each election. Fontana says that shows out-of-district candidates can do just fine here.
Being out of the district is more or less important depending on how far you are from the district. Like, if there's a race with someone from very far away versus someone from very close by, that's different than a race between someone who's from the district and someone who's from just next to the district.
But for some keeping an eye on the special election, strong connections to the district, and more specifically, the Adirondacks within the North Country, are a big deal. John Sheehan is the Adirondack Council's D.C. lobbyist. He says the Adirondack Park tends to sell itself to federal representatives as something worth protecting. But first, they need to see and experience it.
It is always best, from our perspective, to work with people who have an intimate knowledge of the region and understand both the pressures on its communities and the need to protect what is a world-class resource in their backyard.
So, Sheehan says the council is watching the special election race with, quote, great trepidation. He says the wide-open race could pose a challenge for his organization's efforts to help the park at the federal level.
Finding ways to get the right person into that job can be very important to the long-term agenda for environmental protection and for community development.
Alexandra Jacobs-Wilkie says she's keeping an open mind about the candidates. She's the mayor of the village of Potsdam. Jacobs-Wilkie is a Democrat, but says she'll work with anyone, including people from outside the North Country. She says the main thing for her is that they show up for local farmers, healthcare professionals, the military, and the district's other stakeholders.
When people come to them with problems, that they're ready to help and roll up their sleeves and get down to it, and really get what it's all about up here. I think we're all interested to find a fighter for us.
Fontana says, aside from how local the special election candidates will be, something else that remains to be seen is how national politics will play into the race and how the winner fares in Washington. He says, for Republicans, it's possible someone with stronger ties to President-elect Donald Trump than to the North Country could do well in Congress, even as a newcomer.
So maybe it would get, that kind of crowd again if they picked somebody who is really known not for being North Country, but for being very pro-Trump.
But for Mike Zackerbelny, the St. Lawrence County Democratic Party chair, it's about getting back to the North Country and NY21.
Our electorate, I think, by and large, is looking for someone who knows the district, cares about the district, and is going to Washington to work for the district, as opposed to somebody who's looking for a job to be able to, to work for the powers that be in Washington, D.C.
Don Kuhn of the Jefferson County GOP says he's looking for someone who can navigate Congress and be responsive to the North Country's needs.
We've got a number of very qualified candidates that are either tied to the North Country or people that we feel comfortable with that would be good representatives for the northern part of the district.
If Stefanik is confirmed as UN ambassador and resigns as expected, Governor Kathy Hochul must call a special election within about 90 days. Then we'll see who the chairs think is their best bet to win the seat and represent the North Country and beyond. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio, Plattsburgh.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Caitlin Scholl of Lake Placid and Paul Myers of Colton. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.